the entire assumption that we are building our decision-making around, which is that there's a right way and a wrong way, that assumption is false, which means that our decision-making process isn't actually going to work. It's not actually going to yield a better outcome because we're trying to solve for right and wrong when there isn't a right or a wrong. If we get stuck in this right-wrong paradigm, and if we spend all our energy searching for what's quote-unquote right, we never have to face the difficult feelings and vulnerability that comes with leadership.
Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Jess. I'm a New York Times featured podcaster, prior McKinsey consultant, and executive in the corporate space, and current coach for women. I support professional women in building confidence, becoming really effective communicators, and elevating and thriving in leadership roles. That is the mission behind the work I do. And today I am diving into something that is so important and such a universal struggle that we all experience as humans. This is something that we all get stuck in, but it's the fear of doing our job, quote unquote, wrong, the fear of making a wrong decision, the fear of messing up. And I want to talk about this because if you experience the fear of getting it wrong, which by definition is accompanied by the desire to get it quote unquote right, you may be missing out on a really big opportunity to up-level your leadership, your impact, and your execution. But it can be really hard to see this. So I want to free you from the fear of getting it quote unquote wrong. And I want to offer you a new perspective that is going to help you feel liberated in the way that you approach your job and is going to help you elevate the level at which you are executing. I am so excited to dive into this with you because this is one of those shifts that not only is going to make you more effective, but you're going to waste less energy and be less tired and just feel more present and engaged in the work you do because the fear of getting it wrong can be super duper draining. So in today's episode, what I'm going to be doing is first, I'm going to define some of the really common ways that the fear of getting it wrong can pop up for you. I'll share the most common ways that I see with my clients. You might relate to them. And then I'm going to share an analogy to help you understand one key shift that will help you release the fear of doing it quote unquote wrong and improve your leadership and execution by leaps and bounds. So let's start with the most common ways the fear of getting it wrong shows up. There's a few different places that this is going to pop up in your job. All of the places that it pops up are always going to be centered around decision making. Because when you're making a decision, you're putting a stake in the ground, and putting a stake in the ground is scary because you don't want to put a wrong stake in the ground. So anytime you are making decisions, it is a very fertile opportunity for the fear of getting it wrong to pop up. Now, some of the really common decisions that can really activate the fear of getting it wrong are number one, should I contribute in this room? Am I supposed to be contributing in this room? Is that the right thing to do, or is that the wrong thing to do? That's a really, really common one that I see. And another one that piggybacks off of that is, if I'm contributing, what is the right thing to say? What are the types of things I should say? Is it okay if I disagree, or am I not supposed to disagree? Am I supposed to defer to other people? Is it okay to add a new idea, or am I not supposed to do that because there's people in the room who have way more years of expertise than me? So the decision of, am I supposed to be speaking? Am I supposed to be part of this conversation? And then the decision of, how am I supposed to be part of this conversation, can really elicit the fear of doing it wrong and can really have you all up in your head trying to make sure you're doing it right. That said, the fear of getting it wrong and the corresponding desire to get it quote unquote right, they go together. They're two sides of the same exact coin. That fear can also show up in your day-to-day execution as you're making decisions about how to lead your work. It can show up in tiny decisions like, who should I add on this invite? Who should be part of this working team? How many days should I wait until I follow up with this person? It can also be strategic decisions around the work that you do. Should I nudge my team member in this direction or that direction? Should I get input from my boss or should I solve it by myself? Should I elevate it to leadership or should I just take initiative? Should I partner with this other team or should we do this more independently? It can pop up in so many different ways, whether it's the macro or the micro, whether it's when you're sitting in meetings or whether it's when you're behind your desk executing. But either way, it can drain a lot of energy and really get in the way of your most powerful execution. Now, I want to point out something extremely, extremely important about the fear of getting it wrong. And this is going to sound very obvious. And when I say this, you might be like, duh. However, I want you to stick with me because this is really important and we're going to build up to a bigger insight. So, if we are afraid of getting it quote unquote wrong, and if we have a desire to get it quote unquote right, there is a very basic assumption that we are operating under, which is that there is a right and a wrong, that a right and a wrong way, a right and a wrong answer does in fact exist. Therefore, we're using our brain space to try to solve that. Now, this might feel super obvious, but what I'm going to be explaining to you in this episode is a lot of times that assumption is false. The entire assumption that we are building our decision making around, which is that there's a right way and a wrong way, that assumption is false, which means that our decision-making process isn't actually going to work. It's not actually going to yield a better outcome because we're trying to solve for right and wrong when there isn't a right or a wrong. And I want to share an analogy with you because this analogy is the best way for me to explain this. So the analogy is, I want you to imagine two people, Adam and Bob. Adam is a perfectionist. He likes to get it right. He was the teacher's pet in school. He got straight A's. He really likes to know the right answer, find the right answer, and get the right answer. And he'll spend quite a lot of time doing that. And he brings that mindset to pretty much everything he does. Okay, now in addition to Adam, there's also Bob. Bob is much more flexible and agile in his problem solving. Bob's less of a perfectionist. He's less of a black and white thinker. And he recognizes that there isn't always one right answer. Sometimes there's many right answers. Okay, so Bob and Adam are given a very simple task. They're each in cars, and both of their separate cars are driving around the base of a mountain. They're going in circles around the mountain. And the task that they are given is that they have to choose where to park their car, get out of the car, and climb to the top of the mountain. And their goal is to get to the top. Okay, so Adam approaches this task with the mindset of there's a right way and a wrong way to climb this mountain. So he circulates the mountain. He goes around the mountain over and over, trying to find the right way. And he's circling and circling and circling, and he's not getting closer to an answer because this mountain doesn't have any paths carved on it. So he's going around the perimeter and it all kind of looks the same, and he's searching and searching and searching for that right path up the mountain. And he has thoughts like, well, I don't want to choose a path that's too steep. I don't want to choose a path that's too time consuming. I don't want to choose a path that turns out to be a dead end. So I need to figure out where's the right way to climb this mountain. Okay, Bob, who's the more flexible problem solver, circulates the mountain and realizes the base of this mountain all looks the same. There's no clear path or place that one should choose that is the quote unquote right way to climb this mountain. I think I just need to park my car and get out and start climbing the mountain and go from there. So Bob parks his car and starts climbing the mountain. And the path he picks isn't perfect. He runs into giant boulders. He runs into really steep summits. There are places where he has to backtrack and try a different path. But if you zoom out from this mountain scenario and you watch a time lapse of what's happening, what you'll see in the time lapse is you will see the little dot that represents Bob slowly climbing the mountain, and maybe he backtracks here and there, but he keeps climbing. And then at the base of the mountain, you'll see the little car or the little dot that represents Adam just driving around the mountain over and over and over. This analogy is a really great example of the importance of recognizing when we're in situations that don't have one clear right and one clear wrong. And it's a really, really great example of the fact that when we assume that there's this black and white, right and wrong, and we bring that approach to a situation where there isn't a black and white, right and wrong, it can really interfere with our ability to make progress. So in this situation, in this analogy, Adam is assuming there's right and wrong. And even though he's well-intentioned and he's trying to find a smart path up the mountain, ultimately, Bob is the only one of the two of them who's going to be able to complete the task. And yeah, Bob might be really tired and there might be lots of obstacles that Bob encounters on his path upwards. But Bob was able to climb the mountain because he didn't go in assuming there was right and wrong. And therefore, he didn't feel as scared of messing it up. And he was just able to find the courage and the audacity to just park his car and start climbing. Whereas Adam had a belief that there was a right way. And that belief that there's a right way kept Adam spinning in circles, wasting his energy and not getting anything done. And this is something that happens a lot when you are working in a business or in a company. And it happens more and more as you elevate into leadership. As you're moving into leadership, the lines between right and wrong get blurrier and blurrier. And your job becomes less and less straightforward and black and white. But even before you get to leadership phases, there's still going to be tons of blurriness in your job and tons of situations that aren't black and white. And where we can get really stuck is if we get too much in the mindset that Adam has without questioning, am I making an assumption that there is some pre-carved path up this mountain that I'm supposed to take? Or am I actually seeing the situation for what it is, which is a situation where there's many paths up and I'm not going to be able to understand what's right until I just start climbing the mountain. And this is something that happens that we are doing when we get stuck in overthinking and indecision. So if we go back to the example of, am I supposed to be contributing in this meeting? When you're even asking that question, you're already making a really big assumption that there's a right and a wrong, that some meetings you're supposed to contribute in and some meetings you're not supposed to. But my question to you would be, why? Who's deciding that? Where does that right and wrong come from? Are we certain there's a right or a wrong? And the fact is, in most situations, it's a blurry gray area. And you trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong is getting in the way of you doing what will actually be helpful, which is just getting in there, rolling your sleeves up and joining the discussion, and then finding out what happens after that. When Bob climbs the mountain, he might find lots of obstacles and he might choose one path and realize he has to come back down and choose another one. He's still going to be ahead of Adam because he got out of his car and he parked and he started going. And this is something that's really important to understand, which is that in a business setting, we can't expect to do all things perfectly all the time because number one, there usually isn't a perfect way. But number two, even if there is a perfect way or a perfect rule book, sometimes we can't identify what it is without testing and experimenting and having the courage to just put a stake in the ground and move forward. Now, I want to point out something that is really important in all of this. So important, possibly more important than anything I've shared so far on this episode, which is this. When Bob is climbing the mountain, he's tired, he's sweating, it's uncomfortable. He's facing all the hard stuff because he's climbing that mountain. Whereas Adam is all comfortable in his air-conditioned car, just cruising around, right? And if you think about it, there's a little bit of a temptation to be like Adam because you just get to stay in your comfortable, climate-controlled vehicle, listening to your music or your podcast. Whereas like Bob is out there up on this mountain without cell reception, feeling uncomfortable, feeling tired, maybe his shirt ripped because he ran into a rock or whatever. Like he's in the elements. He's feeling it. It feels hard. And I share this with you because when we are facing these decisions and we're trying to choose, quote unquote, the right thing, sometimes that is just a way that we are unconsciously protecting ourselves from discomfort. Just like with Adam, he doesn't have to deal with the mountain if he can't find a way up. So if he spends all of his attention and all of his time just searching for a path, he never actually has to get out of his car and climb. And there might be a part of Adam deep down inside that kind of likes that. And that's something that we experience often too. We realize that making these decisions in our careers feels scary. Choosing to participate in the meeting feels scary. Putting a stake in the ground on how we think the project should go feels scary. Making decisions about how we want to execute and lead feels scary. Going to our boss and leaders and bringing direction to them feels scary. All of these things feel scary. And sometimes our brain gets really clever about avoiding those scary things, and it can occupy us with endless decisions and deliberations and thinking and deciding and gathering information. Because as long as we do that, we don't have to do the scary thing and face the vulnerability of climbing that mountain, right? We don't have to share our perspective in a room and see how people respond to it. We don't have to put a stake in the ground and be then afraid of how our boss might react to it. If we get stuck in this right-wrong paradigm, and if we spend all our energy searching for what's quote unquote right, we never have to face the difficult feelings and vulnerability that comes with leadership. But this literally is what the definition of leadership is. It's the person who is willing to park their car and climb the mountain, even though they don't know the path up. And even though it's going to be very hard and uncomfortable. And even though they might choose a wrong route and they might have to backtrack and start again. Leadership comes with the willingness to experience all of the uncertainty and vulnerability that comes with that experience. And in the analogy of the mountain, that uncertainty and discomfort is much more about the physical discomfort of facing the elements on the mountain. But in your role, when we're talking about discomfort, it's emotional discomfort, it's psychological discomfort. You're going to have to face the psychological experience of being more direct, being more assertive, being more decisive, because when we do those things, we're giving people around us something to respond to. And when we give them something to respond to, that feels exposing and scary. But leaders are willing to do that. Leaders are willing to give their audience something to respond to because they know that that's the fastest way up the mountain. They know that, hey, I can stay comfortable in my car telling myself that there must be some right way and I can circle and circle and circle with my air conditioning blasting, but that's not actually going to get the problem solved. So I want to raise your awareness and I want you to be onto yourself if you're ever getting in an Adam pattern where you're circling the mountain over and over and over. Again, this could be in a meeting where you're going back and forth on whether you should say something. And then when you finally decide you want to say something, you're going back and forth on how you should say it. It could be in your day-to-day when you're executing and you're deciding how you should approach something or who you should loop in or how the work should be done. But I want you to catch yourself and I want you to ask yourself, am I trying to find a path up a mountain where a clear paved path doesn't exist? And once you realize that, it can also be really helpful to ask yourself, what discomfort will I have to feel if I just go ahead and make a decision and move forward? And am I willing to feel that discomfort? And in what ways is that discomfort going to grow me as a leader? How will I benefit from climbing the mountain, even though it's going to feel really, really difficult in the moment? When you make this pivot, on the one hand, yes, it feels scary because you're taking risks, you're putting your ideas out there, you're being more bold and directive. But on the other hand, you feel more free because you don't have to get stuck circling the mountain for hours, which is exhausting in its own way. You approach your work completely differently. You see that you have options. You see that there's a level of freedom. And what you ultimately see, and what is the most important, is that you see that you are capable of forging the way. You are capable of exercising your judgment to find a way to get it done. You are capable of sorting through messy, difficult, ambiguous situations that don't have clear right answers and wrong answers. Every time you choose to climb the mountain, every time you choose to forge ahead, even though you don't know what the quote unquote right answer is, you build your confidence, you build your belief in yourself and your self-trust that you can be faced with these messy, muddy situations and you will be able to figure out you will thrive. This is ultimately what's going to help you lead at a higher level is all of the confidence that you build from doing that over and over and over. I want you to imagine how amazing Bob will feel after he's done this mountain exercise 20 times on 20 different mountains. He's going to feel so strong about his ability to just park the car and get up there. And similarly, you're going to feel so strong about your ability to just get in there, take the promotion, take the hard project, take the messy thing. You know you'll be able to handle it, even if you don't have all the answers. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. It is such an honor to have you listening. And if you're listening to this and you're realizing that you want to up-level your leadership skills and you want to step into more of this leadership mindset, I am sharing something for the very first time that I have never shared on the podcast before that I feel really excited to share, which is that I have behind the scenes launched a new program. It's all about leadership. It's all about up-leveling your skills and confidence as a leader and helping you either prepare for or really thrive in that next leadership role that you have your eye on. This program is called the Leadership Lab. And because it's brand new, I'm running it in very, very small cohorts. I'm also running it with a reduced tuition because it's new. And so the people who go through those first couple cohorts, I'm going to be asking them to give me feedback on the curriculum and the program. So it's not at a full-fledged program level, but I do have space in one of the upcoming cohorts. And if you are feeling like you want to feel confident about your ability to climb mountains and you want to stop getting stuck in indecision and you want to become powerful and decisive and agile in your execution, this program was created for you. And I want to invite you to add your name to the waitlist. You will be first to find out when those open spots that I mentioned are available. I don't have a ton of open spots, so I just want to set expectations there that it's a super small cohort and it's probably just going to be 1 or 2 spots available in the next one that I'm kicking off in about a month from now. But if you're feeling like it's for you, or if you just want to learn more, head to the link in the show notes. You can add yourself to the waitlist. You can also check out the curriculum, which covers 3 really important areas. 1 is the mindset of a leader, 2 is the execution of a leader, and 3 are the relationships of a leader. So that includes stakeholder management and managing up. Those are really the 3 areas that you want to be working on and cultivating: mindset, execution, and relationships. This episode in particular is all about mindset and execution. The Leadership Lab covers both of those, and it also covers stakeholder relationships, because unlike the Bob and Adam analogy, when you are climbing that mountain, you are not doing it alone. You are doing it with lots of other people. So your relationships play a huge role in your ability to succeed as a leader. If you're feeling the pull to check it out, click the link in the show notes or head over to jessguzikcoaching.com/leadership. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next week. Bye.